All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Chasing Rings podcast. Hey, what's up, fellas? What's going on tonight?
How are you, gentlemen? Good evening.
Good. Hanging in there, hanging in there.
Good to see
Well,
you,
a
brother.
lot going on. A lot going on. Since we last spoke, we had the CFP title game between Indiana and Miami taking place on Monday, of course. Indiana's always been known as a basketball school, so it's interesting for them to be football champs now. But they won 5 chips in basketball, and they actually were the last team to go undefeated back. I think it was the 1976 team went 32-0. So now it has an undefeated football team, finished 16-0, first team to ever go 16-0, earning its first ever championship. Congratulations to Hoosier Nation. Congrats to the Big Ten. We'll get into that as much as it might make me vomit. We'll get into that a little bit. But, we were treated to a heck of a game on Monday night. It was a little slow in the beginning, seemed like it was going to be business as usual. But Miami definitely hung in there and made it the game that we were all hoping it would be. Where do you think this game was won and lost? We had a game that went down to the wire where it didn't look like it would get there, but it went down to the wire. Miami actually having a chance to win it, having the ball last there. Where do you think this game was won and lost?
I would say turnovers would be a big space and really and capitalizing on the turnovers. So I think if I had to summarize it, I would say just being able to manage those turnovers and Indiana taking advantage. That really, 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 I think set the underlying tone of that game.
All right. What about you, big dude?
Uh, I think that Miami was just a little shell shocked, even though they weren't down by much. I think in a physical battle, Miami was trying the best they could to establish the physical battle in the beginning, and Miami gave and we saw them gave Mendoza some good shots. They cut Mendoza's lip and knocked him upside the head and everything else, and of course the coach was concerned about it, but and then they actually had the physical advantage in the offensive line, but they couldn't break them. So I think when Miami tried to break them, and Miami did everything they could. I know they had Bain, who had a great game, and they, on the defensive line, and they gave Indiana some trouble. And I think the difference was a lot of people didn't notice their right tackle, number 67, had been replaced by number 72 to block Bain and to slow Bain down some. So I think they made some movement. They never gave up on a run game. They didn't have a tremendous run game, but they never. I was impressed the way Indiana didn't give up on the run game. And then Miami started off in the second half doing well, made some adjustments. Fletcher ran the ball well in the second half, and even I would say that of course, looking at Tony. Malachi Tony, at the end, he actually made a play, and I think we were discussing it while we were texting on a botched punt return that may have cost them the possession that they wanted. Even though he made up for it later, I think the botched punt return kind of put Miami's foot back in the hole. Even though he made up for it, when you're playing Indiana, you really can't really put your foot in the hole. And you talked about special team plays, and of course, the young man that blocks the punt, and the big thing is the young man that blocks the punt is from James Madison, as well as Pons, the corner, who's just a physical corner, and I think set the stage for the game on the outside game and in space, and another guy from James Madison. So I would say a number of people that Signetti brought with him, you saw the difference. Who was ready and who was ready to accept the challenge. And I think some of the interviews afterwards reflected that they felt as they were always going to be in the game. There wasn't any way they were going to really lose. But just all the things that Signetti did, respond, make changes. And at the end, of course, Charlie Becker, with the comeback catches, probably two of the biggest comeback catches in CFP history to keep everything going.
Man, I like to also add that I think that with the age of that team, I kind of chalked that up to time on task. So I believe you have a lot of athletes who've been playing at the collegiate level. They've been produced, whether they was at JMU or Indiana, and they continued with that time on task. So there's a certain level of confidence I think that
Yes.
goes on the longer you stay at that level versus immediately trying to jump into the pros. There's some development that takes place, which also, from what I've been reading about Indiana and their coaching philosophy, they do believe in starting with that base and really giving their players some space to grow and develop. And we talk about, growing and developing as college athletes. And so that was the culture for that this Indiana team was operating under. And I think that those are kind of intangibles that I think I would like to throw in there, and add to what Big Dude just said about from the skill perspective.
Yeah, I think that accurately really captures Indiana's entire run through this season, but
Hmm.
specifically throughout the playoffs. I think that sums them up real nicely. They don't make a lot of mistakes. It's like you said, it's the result of all of that time in the lab and the repetition that goes with it, the experience that goes with it.
Hmm.
Not a lot of penalties, very crisp execution, especially if you think about the passing game, for example. They run those timing patterns much more at a much higher level than you typically see a collegiate football team run it
Hmm.
at. He was throwing that ball before those receivers were coming out of their breaks, very much like NFL
Right.
offenses. So I think everything you just said about their maturity is spot on in terms of I think what separated this team from the rest of the pack. I mean, Miami did not play a bad game. And I
No,
think
he
something
didn't.
that you mentioned last time, G, about the comparison of the number of 5-star, 4 and 5-star athletes that these teams had versus Indiana with guys who may not have had a star at all, up to
Hmm.
2 and 3 stars. Having that advantage of having that repetition again and having that experience within a system, being playing at this level for as long as they have, definitely makes a difference. So yeah, I think
Hmm.
that's spot on. Interestingly enough about this game, people were wondering how interesting it would be because it's Indiana, right? Who wants to watch Indiana play football? Over 30 million viewers watched this game. That's the highest
Wow.
viewership for a college football championship game since the first CFP with Ohio State and Oregon back in 2015, and even higher viewership since the Chicago Cubs game 7, which was, I think, the 2016 World Series, if I'm not mistaken. So, highest non NFL viewership that we've seen.
Wow.
So, that says a lot about where the interest truly lies in terms of those big brands. So I think Indiana is a brand in itself. All the backstories were interesting to a lot of people that may not have tuned into the entire season. But again, great job by Indiana. Congratulations to them. And I'm really eager to look forward to what's going to happen with them in the future. I hope that they can maintain where they are. I think it's good for the game. It helps other team elevate their levels and helps them kind of reframe maybe how they should approach putting together their programs.
Well,
But
he brought a lot of his people with him, right?
Yeah.
mhm,
Yes, he
You
did.
yep,
know, and
yep,
so I don't. Well, I definitely hope they can maintain this because the culture is the culture, and I hope that
mhm,
doesn't change. But he can't control if these kids decide to hit the portal. And now
absolutely.
Indiana, they have like the ultimate, marketing tool for that program is that they just won a chip and went undefeated, and they still have their coaches intact. So, but whether now they're going to start receiving a lot more NIL looks. I think Mark Cuban is associated with Indiana.
Yep, he's an alum.
So a lot of that stuff, and I know we're going to get to NIL, but a lot of that is going to probably start coming into play for IU now. I think something you said that was important. It's the same reason why a lot of people watch WNBA. It was the narrative. I think a lot of Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese, that drew a lot of eyes to, particularly to that rivalry. But then I think that kind of permeated across the league in different degrees. I think
Hmm.
that's what we had here. That narrative is IU. They were a doormat forever. How's his basketball team? Running through college football right now. Then you got the prospect of the U. Are they back? Then you also have the two Miami natives. One is playing at Miami, one is playing for the opposers. There were just so many storylines that
Hmm.
if you're a lay viewer and you just interested in see how hype ends, I mean, this was a perfect. This should be a documentary.
Oh,
I really
it
believe.
will be.
Oh
It
yeah,
will be.
absolutely.
Yeah, both of them, and I can see it actually coming from both of their perspectives. As long as they don't, trip over Michael Irvin.
You notice
I'm
that
like,
they cut down the shots of Irvin unless I
Yes, they
just
did.
happened to be taking breaks at those times. I didn't see
did
him
they
as
good?
heavily in the last two games.
Right, right. And I only say that because social media has been really dogging him,
Oh, they've been
and
relentless.
huh,
They've been relentless.
oh my gosh. But yeah, I think that this whole season for both of them that should be a wonderful documentary, particularly from a Miami perspective and resilience. How do you bounce back from the ACC and their messed up process? You're the best team in ACC, but you're not playing in your championship, but you
Hmm.
still have what it takes to make it to the championship game. I think that is, and you also projected as one of the people who could possibly win it all at the beginning of the season. So I just think
Hmm.
seeing how their ups and downs went, and then of course we talked about Indiana. This season would make a great documentary.
Agree, agree. So as we start to move into what next season looks like,
Hmm.
the Big Ten has won the last three championships, dating back to Michigan, Ohio State, now Indiana. Are we looking at this shift where the Big Ten? I know G has thought the Big Ten's been the dominant conference before this, so I don't
Yes,
know how he may respond to this,
I'm a homer.
um,
That's why.
but I mean, there's no, I can't, as an SEC person, I can't even argue with either of you as Big Ten, you know, fans, certain stuff. You're an alum of Penn State. I don't think I can argue with you at point. Are we reaching a point where the Big Ten is it? Are they the show? They won the last three. When the SEC was winning them all, that's what the narrative was, that it's the SEC and everybody else. Is it the Big Ten and everybody else now?
Mhm. Well, I mean, I would say that the Big Ten has been very fortunate, and obviously to still stay on subject, but I just think that in terms of transfers, a number of people from the smaller schools or the FCS schools, I think, are going to the Big Ten. Many of the people are coming from Drake and from. I know we had a wideout from Kent State. So we got some people in the Big Ten. I think that I think it's the context of things where a lot of people were seem to be coming to the SEC and coming there, and now we start talking about what the recruiting is. I say for the freshmen, especially in the recruiting, on we know that it's a different ball game and how people come in, but these last classes, especially especially the last couple, the class, a 2023 class, 2024 post pandemic. I think the Big Ten. It kind of nudged its way ahead. And I think since there have been some changes, there's also been a lot of excitement because of the changes, with the Pac 12 breaking up and the Big Ten getting those particular teams. There's a number of people who might not have seen California. When I came and I played, obviously we weren't in the Big Ten. That's why it took a long time for me to get caught up in saying, yes, we're the Big Ten. But now in seeing it, it's all these other places, Oregon, USC, UCLA. These are the places that people want to go to. I think the Big Ten is more appealing to the eye, especially with some of the younger players that are either transferring early or are coming right out of high school. that have a chance to play. And those are the things that they're looking at. And I think the SEC is still fine. I just think that the Big Ten is caught up in a lot of ways. Dominance, I'd say dominance by the winner. And I guess when we start talking about the internal schedule with the SEC, that's still tough as nails. It's just that I think the internal schedule, adding UC, even though UCLA last year didn't have as good of a team, and this year better, having individuals that are part of their squad and still getting their quality players and still playing USC on your and UCLA on your schedule, and Oregon, it makes it a totally different game than I think playing the SEC. And to tell you the truth, as a player, there was nothing like going down to it was Birmingham Field and then going to Tuscaloosa. There was nothing like walking into Tuscaloosa Stadium coming from Penn State. But those were all national things that were going on, and there weren't a lot of opportunities to play these other teams. So I would say, looking at all these other teams, I would also say that ACC, it appears to be, when you're going down south with Miami and some of the other teams, I think they're taking some of the players that the SEC probably would have gotten before. So the ACC is also exciting and taking their players, and people are taking their chances going to those schools as well. So I don't think the SEC is dominant anymore necessarily with the recruiting. You know, you had Nick Saban. He had those national championships. He was dominant with recruiting, and recruiting was going a certain way. He got out of it because he saw a lot of things coming. So I think it's going to be interesting with all the things that we will talk about is how much will things change with recruiting, and how is that going to affect who goes where, and with a Kurt Signetti type of program, is that going to be the model in the Big Ten? That'll be interesting to see if people follow Kurt Signetti suit in bringing people from other places.
Okay, so
in fact, Penn State has. I'm sorry.
No, go finish your thought.
No, I was just going to say Penn State has already brought 21 players over from Iowa State. That was up.
Okay, so when you said recruitment, I'm like, hell nah. Penn State's not out. Big Ten's not out recruiting SEC. So I'm like, okay, I need to look this up because I want to make sure. So going back to 2023 recruiting, Ohio State was the highest ranked recruiting class out of the Big Ten. They were fourth. Out of the top 10, if you want to count USC, I don't think they were in the Big Ten then, but we'll count them. USC was 8, Oregon was 9. Everybody else was SEC and 1 ACC. And that's pretty much what it looks like at 24, 25, and 26. I'll just jump to 26. 26 still is very SEC dominated. USC, surprisingly, has the top ranked class. Oregon next, so that's 2 Big Ten, but everything else is SEC. Notre Dame, you got Ohio State in there, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, A&M, LSU, Michigan's 12. So there has to be some type of separation taking place here with the transfer portal, which is, you were speaking, big dude. I was thinking about the transfer portal and why are players leaving schools like Alabama and Georgia to pick these Big Ten schools, because I see that a lot. A lot of, I've been joking about it since we started the podcast, but, you have a lot of guys jumping ship to Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State from the SEC that you hadn't really seen before. And I would look the guys up to see where they're from. Maybe that has something to do with it. They were going home. There was really no trend in, where these guys were from. It's not like they were transferring to go back home. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, as we delve into this a little bit deeper, what is the attraction? Okay, you won the last 3 championships. Mm-hmm. I know the markets are a part of it, the economic markets, which that'll become a part of our discussion, I'm sure. Some of those SEC schools, some of those SEC schools are in the middle of East Bumble. So, I can see losing out there. I was not aware that I knew Indiana had a large alumni base, but I did not know that what I've heard recently, that they could be perhaps the number 1 alumni base.
That's what I heard.
I know Penn State's got a huge base. That they have the most alum. They have the largest alumni base. I thought Penn State was for a while, but from everything that I've been hearing, Indiana has the largest alumni base. I know Ohio State's
Really?
big. I know that Penn State's big. I've never really heard a lot about SEC schools being considered the tops when it comes to their alumni base, even though I'm sure they have large alumni bases. But you always hear Penn State. You can't go anywhere without people saying, "Oh, Penn State" or "the Ohio State,"
Yeah.
and
Indiana
apparently
has the
now
largest
Indiana.
living alumni base.
So I'm wondering
All about Penn State.
because Steph, even though the recruiting rankings don't show that, I do think you're right. I think that the Big Ten is winning the recruiting battle, but perhaps the transfer portal is leveling the field in terms of the freshman recruiting classes, because we'd have to look at their analytics to see how are they ranking these classes. Are you including, if I go to Alabama and I leave, are you where do I count in terms of Alabama's final recruiting class, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
I'm sure that might come into
Yeah.
play.
that's normally high school. That's not transfer portal or I don't even think that's considered junior college as part
Yeah.
of recruiting class.
Yeah, I always thought it was freshmen, straight out of high school as
That's what
well.
I always thought.
So that's a
Yeah.
little so then I would say that that's very misleading.
Right.
To,
And that's what I'm
to say
saying. And
we have the number one ranked recruiting class doesn't mean anything anymore.
well,
Because they
that's what
always talk about stars when they talk about recruiting class. Stars.
Mm-hmm.
And stars go
Yep.
to high school, not current college players, if I
Well,
remember
I'm
correctly.
glad you brought that up. Listen to this one. So USC's got the number one ranked recruiting class, right? Coming in. They only
USC?
have one. Say it again.
You say USC?
Mm-hmm. Southern Cal. I call
Yeah,
USC a Southern Cal to me. I don't know what South Carolina wants to call itself, but USC
Mhm.
for the last 56 years, for me, has been Southern Cal. They have one 5-star, number one recruiting class. They have one 5-star, 21 4-stars, 13 3-stars. And nobody has. Ohio State's only got one 5-star. Georgia's only got one 5-star. Alabama's got 4. Notre Dame's got 4. You would
I don't
expect
think
those
we have
teams to
many.
maybe
Yeah.
have more than that in 5-stars. You would think.
Yeah, and like I said, Penn State doesn't have any, but it's I think we've been getting those first year people, and I guess that's the question that's going to be when we start to talk about um, teams that are ready. What is it that we're going to give the most value to? And that'll be the next. Like I said, I don't want to trip over into the next thing, Guru, because I know you'll be bringing us
No,
into it.
take
But
us
just
take us to where we go. This is open
okay.
Look,
discussion.
man, I
We're
don't get
talking
to
about
talk
where we're
about
going.
Big Ten dominance.
What was that?
I don't get to
We're
share
gonna
my thoughts on Big Ten dominance.
Oh,
we're gonna get there. We're gonna get to you. Let's finish this thought and get back to you, because I know you're chomping at the bit to talk about Big Ten dominance.
right,
No,
right.
I
So now folks are also switching. So recruiting, even though it's still a question, I would say I was surprised. Like I said, now I'm thinking that we're higher, but even with the 3 people in the top 10, I think are big with the high school things. But that first part, and we start to talk about who has the transfer portal money, especially early, especially now that there have been some coaching changes. Now you got coaching changes in both. So who is it that has the resources? And that's what Dion was saying. Who's in a totally different conference. People are leaving just because of what the check. That's what he said. There's no way you can keep people, and you can't take it personal anymore. But the part and what people have in terms of resources and who follows their coaches, I think, is also big as well. And I guess, like I said, the question will be and I think Big Ten may have started off following suit with some of those different things. Signetti's done that. Now you got Matt Campbell from Penn State, and I don't know what difference it will make, but them having 21 people, including their quarterback, our quarterback now, I should say, Beck. He comes over, but what's he going to be like in the system? And then who is Matt Campbell supposed to be? That's what I don't know. Signetti's the one that said, "Hey, he kind of comes in there like Nick Saban did. I'm not going to lose." Now, there was nobody in the Big Ten that I knew of that said they weren't going to lose. They're going to have a good season. Not going to lose. So I think that's more of the attitude and why people are coming there, And you also might have a situation, I think, beside Indiana, we do have people to hit the transfer portal as well. I don't know what the situation would be with who we're keeping. I know with some of the people that we had left, they were fifth-year players, even at Penn State this year. Some of the people stayed, and it didn't work for us, and we had one of the best rosters in the country. But, are people staying? Are we going to see more of these 24, 25-year-old guys playing in the Big Ten? It looks like you always have somebody older.
All right, before we get to UG, I want to say one last thing about this recruitment, and this kind of takes us back to where we were going with the Big Ten stuff. Indiana has the 34th ranked recruiting class. So I'm gonna leave that there. That's ridiculous because
because
they have
put everything in the NIL.
They have no 5 stars, 7 4 stars, or 15 3 stars.
That transfer portal.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say that. So there are 2 rankings. There is the high school ranking, like who had the best recruiting class out of high school with the stars and whatnot. But now there's a transfer ranking as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at
what do you have there for transfer rankings, G? What are they kicking?
Yeah, what's
so
the
out
stars?
of 100 points right now so far, LSU has they got now they still are using the stars, believe it or not, but these are people coming from the portal. So LSU number 1, 2 5 stars, 11 4 stars, 23 3 stars. So these are folk who are current college students, and they're just transferring. And then Ole Miss, Texas, Ohio State, Penn State. IU is number 7. Interestingly enough, Kentucky is number 9, and Kentucky is one of those teams. I guess right now depends on what year you want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
They can be a doormat, or they can be a team, one of those teams you don't want to play.
Yeah, that's interesting that they're ranked so high.
Well, I mean, like I said, they're one of those teams that, wing and a prayer. If you can put it all together, they're that team, one of those teams you don't want to play. I think it was last season that they played really, really well. Was that last season or season before?
Shit, it seems like it's been a few seasons. Maybe it was last year, but definitely the year before that.
Mm-hmm. So, people remember those things. But nevertheless, so just I wanted to go back to recruiting to talk about
Penn
how they
State's
handle the
5th.
transfer stuff.
Penn
So now,
State's 5th on there.
Huh?
Penn State's 5th on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. But here's the
we
thing.
had the number 1 roster this year. That didn't do a lot of good. That did.
Y'all almost beat Indiana in the midst of all that turmoil. So I mean, a good whoever is talking to y'all recruits, they're helping them understand. Look, you're going into a good situation with Penn State.
Yeah, and I think Terry, the fact that he was in it as the interim, and the fact that he's humble enough. I mean, he had those jobs at UConn, and I forgot the other place, but he had the job at UConn. That job was his, but he wanted to stay back and make it a little bit better. So him leaving that role that he was in, as the associate head coach, coaching the corners, being on the road recruiting, being the interim and finishing and winning a bowl game and having his hand on the wheel. When you drive, you can actually tell somebody else how to drive. And I think it's kind of what happened with coming in with with Matt Campbell. He's got to rely on Terry and how Terry knows how to navigate the campus, navigate, who goes in the transfer portal and the connections that Terry already had. So Terry hadn't left, and we lost some people because people thought Terry wasn't going to be back. So it's a matter of them being able to, and I think the smartest thing that Penn State did was retain more people than that. I can't remember who else that they brought in, but they also, I think they retained maybe 4 or 5 other coaches, and other coaches left.
Okay, so let's get back to getting too specific to our self-interest here. G, if you can get back to the generically Big Ten dominance, the floor is yours.
So I'm going to respond to this as a homer first and then objective. So as a homer, Based on the last 3 seasons, yes, I would say Big Ten is dominant at the very top. I'll say we're definitely dominant. I would say that the SEC, I begrudgingly say that SEC may still be deeper with the number of teams, but the Big Ten is more dominant. Now, objectively speaking, the bowls. Looking at the bowl season record, and we just kind of crushed y'all. The Big Ten kind of crushed the SEC. SEC was 4-10. Um, and so I'm just like, yeah, we were more dominant. You can make the argument, well, we didn't have all our people. Well, neither did we. So then our backups are better than your backups. So I'm going to
I'll
say,
address that. I'll address that after you're done.
okay. So yes, we're definitely dominant. Now, objectively speaking, I don't believe you can really answer that question because we're not doing enough interleague play. I think with definitely more interleague play, more requirements like that, then you may start to be able to use an analytics process to really try to classify, which team is the most dominant. And I'm throwing in
Hmm.
ACC in there. I'm throwing the Big 12 in there. We don't know what's going to happen with the Pac-2, but nevertheless, until we get rid, and I kind of say this because I do it in some ways like the P4 playing the G5s. It gives the G5, that money. They get views. They get to determine how good are they really as a G5 compared to P4. So there's a lot of education that come out of that from the P4 team, especially if they're rolling that G5 school. They get to work on some things themselves, try out some plays, work on specific decision making schemes. So there are definitely some positives I can see that come out of that. But if we get into the point of asking ourselves about dominance, those games will have to go away, and then you will have to schedule other P4 teams outside of your conference and have a lot of interleague play to truly determine who's the most dominant, in my view,
Hmm.
objectively.
Read these bowl games. Even when the SEC would be like, oh, their SEC is 8-1 in bowl games. That you know why that those numbers don't mean anything to me is
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of these teams and players approach these bowl games a little bit differently. And I would argue, obviously, I don't know. I would argue that for a school like a LSU or I would say even last year when Bama didn't make the playoffs, schools
Mm-hmm.
that are used to competing for a national championship to then get amped up to go to the Citrus Bowl, you can't tell me that they're like whatever. They're not like whatever. I'm sorry. I don't feel like you're getting that 9-3, 10-2. I don't think you're getting that team that you get during the year going to that bowl game because I mean, if we look objectively, if we were and stuff, you could speak to this from experiences. Okay, you've had national championship game, and then you've had other bowl games. And I would venture to say that when it's other bowl games, guys are probably a little bit more carefree, maybe doing a lot of other recreational things, maybe not getting rest, secluding themselves, focus on the game. Probably don't care that much about the game as they would as if it was a national championship or a playoff game. And that would apply to anyone. It would apply to anyone. I'm not just saying, oh well, we lost because our guys didn't care and Big Ten guys cared more. Um, I think that you will find a little bit of that when you look at these bowl games. And for me, it's the same as being a fan of it. I'm not. I was. I don't. I think I watched. I don't think I watched any other bowl game in its totality that wasn't a playoff game. I may have been
Yeah,
in
me
rooms and
too.
the TV was on, like even the end of the Penn, like Steph, of course, you're going to watch the Penn State game. It's your alma mater. And I caught some of that because I also went to Penn State and Penn State's, one of my teams as well. But I didn't sit there and say, oh, I can't wait till the kickoff to see how
Right.
Penn State starts off.
I actually didn't see that whole game. I mean, it was the same. I was happy for Terry, but like you said, there wasn't that same anticipation. And I think it's different now. Now that people are getting NIL money and everything else, it's even less of a thing. Before when you got to remember the context and stuff. Going to a bowl game, it didn't mean money. It meant that you got better bowl stuff if you went to a better game. If you went to the Sugar Bowl, your stuff at the Citrus Bowl wasn't going to be as nice as your stuff at the and I didn't get a chance to go to the Sugar Bowl. But when we went to the Fiesta Bowl, we didn't really get this. Like, okay, let's wait. We're playing for the national championship. Then we finally win the national championship, and we had to wait for our sweatsuit. Then it's a matter of Nike versus something else. But it just was not the same thing. But I say with us, there was a lot of positions that were open. There wasn't any transfer portal. So sometimes you were trying to figure out where your standing would be in spring ball. So all those things were important also. That's why the context of a lot of this is different. We were not getting paid. So, no, there was nothing like going to play for at all. No game like playing Miami for the championship and playing them there. We were at the Aloha Bowl. The Orange Bowl was big, too, when we played against Bosworth and those guys. That was big. And the Fiesta Bowl was big. Then the Citrus Bowl the last year, we got blown out because people really didn't have it together. And
you made me think about, our childhood. We all about the same age. When the national championship was a coronation, and so you knew it was going to be in the Sugar Bowl, the Orange Bowl, Fiesta Bowl. One of those was going to be, or the Rose Bowl. One of them was going to be the championship game. So, but that also made the conference connections to the different bowls a lot more special. I also think that because I remember watching some bowls that we probably wouldn't think about watching. I remember, hey, this is a blast for the past. I remember watching the Bluebonnet Bowl in Carolina.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Bluebonnet Bowl.
Yes, absolutely. I was up there hyped over Bluebonnet Bowl. But you know what? And they had their whole team. But back then, that was the only postseason. That was another opportunity for the pros to take a look at you. Yep. And if you were fighting for position for next year, if you were able to get in, that was an opportunity for you to show. So the reward for being in a bowl was dramatically different in the 80s
yes.
than it is now, 70s than it is now. So what does that mean for now? You're right. You're right, Guru. These bowl games outside of playoffs, you were not operating with your full squad. There are a lot of folks that there were some who just said, I'm out, I'm going to hit the portal. Some like, I'm not playing because I want to go to the league. I'm preparing for the draft. A lot of them already had their bag. So it's just like, it is what it is. I don't need this. So, I mean, right now it's just different. And I know we're going to get into this, but right now it's just so different that unless they figure out a way to make more of the bowls, I don't know if they can do them all, to make more of the bowls meaningful, we're going to still have crappy bowls outside of the New Year's Six.
Yeah. But it's still, the thing is, it's still money. There's still sponsorship. And there's money to be made. And a university is still going to cash in, but they don't put the cameras on the fans because the stadium is half empty, or in some cases 3/4 empty. They even had a bowl game in the Bahamas, which is a great place to go. I don't think it's a great place to watch a football game. I'm not sure I'd be worried about playing a football game. And I've been to the Bahamas a time or two. I don't quite understand that. And I like their attempts to do it, but I think it's time for something else.
And you know what the beginning of this ball situation was with these opt-outs and all of that? What the pinnacle of it was the Florida State-Georgia game from, 2-3 years ago, when Florida State got shunned because of the one loss, thought they should have been in and ended up playing Georgia. And everybody said this is their opportunity to prove their point that they should have belonged, because I think Georgia lost to Alabama, I think, in the SEC title game that year and got edged out, who also had a case for possibly being in. But Florida State's like, no, we're good. And guys opted out, didn't play, all that type of stuff. And I think that was probably the pinnacle of this bowl game. These bowl games being diminished in terms of what they meant to the players. That's why, again, I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses for the SEC, but we all know if we look at the NFL draft, it's top heavy, Big Ten, SEC guys, and I can guarantee you, if we did a breakdown, that you see a lot of those guys are like, nope, about to get ready for the combine, not worth the risk. This isn't for a national championship. Good luck. I'll get you some money when I make it to the league. I'll donate some money back. Y'all have fun in Orlando.
Yeah.
Most definitely, most definitely. And I hate saying this because the people who do play, it take it. I respect anybody who's willing to go on television and play any sport, sing, what have you, and you getting critiqued to be damned by it, but you're like, you know what, I'm gonna go play regardless. And so I have a lot of respect for any of that because I tried to watch some of the games during bowl week,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean it was some of the worst football that I've seen in ages.
Yep. And it's
Not gonna
teams that you had seen before, and you know that they played better than that during the year.
But you can't do that when some of your main people are like, yeah, I'm out. Let me go sit and rest for the combine. And
Yeah.
I get it. It
Yeah.
only takes one blown knee to ruin your whole prospect of an NFL
Mhm.
career. I get it. So if I'm not going to beat a dead horse on this one, to your point, big dude, something's going to have to change. The
And one
money
more point up.
is giving out $8 million, so it's not about money.
And one more point about the bowl games too, and we'll leave it. The team that is playing that SEC school or that Big Ten school is like, oh, well, we're going to make a name for ourselves and show you that the Sun Belt can take it to one of these schools. So that's the other variable to it. You got the big
Yeah,
brand doesn't have its players, and the smaller brand is like, we don't care who you have. This is
right.
going to be a W, and people are going to think we beat this SEC school. So
Right.
yeah, that's
Oh,
that.
you bring up a
Um,
good point about that though. It's still the conference connections.
mhm.
That's going to be a big hurdle to improving the bowls. But okay, I'm done.
All right. Um, NIL era / transfer portal. I mean, I think they kind of go hand in hand. The way the NIL money is being wielded to lure these transfers. Is it the NIL era going to destroy college football as we know it? Has it already? Can we fix it? Gee, we dominated the floor last time. You go first on this one.
Will it destroy college football? No, I don't think it'll destroy it because everybody is adapting to what the system is. Just like when the boosters was wide open, everybody was wide open with boosters. When boosters had to go underground and figure out other ways, everybody's boosters went underground and figured out other ways. So I don't think it'll destroy it, but it's NIL is as it is right now is definitely changing it, and I would say it's definitely changing in some ways for the worse. But everybody is doing it, and the ones who are profiting are profiting. But yeah, I don't think it's going to destroy it. Just change it significantly.
Got you. What about you, Big Dude? What are you, especially having Big Dude, you having participated when there was no NIL era, can bring some perspective to this. What do you think in terms of what you're seeing versus what your experiences may have been?
Well, I don't think it'll destroy it. And I know I may have mentioned this on other episodes, but I'll mention it once again just for context. I mean, something had to happen and something had to change. With a number of years, folks weren't able to live on campus and they started to follow some of these schools. And they didn't have anything outside the season when there wasn't training table. The NCAA came up with all their commercials that talked about you're going to go pro in something else, and you should be glad you have your scholarship. And this was brought up in a class that you taught, Guru. Shouldn't you just be glad on what the value of the scholarship is? And that was the problem. So I would say when it changed over, each state is the one that took over this NIL thing. After the Ed O'Bannon thing, California taking over, saying, "Hey, you're going to be able to make a little money on an autograph show. Why can't you make money on an autograph show? Why can't you sell your likeness?" We talked about it, and there's a court case. What can everyone do? It went from one state, it went from 3 states, and it went to 17. And I think it ended up being like 40 that are saying, hey, the legislation, and everybody's talking about it going to Congress. If every state is ganging up on Congress, they're not going to be able to change it. So if you're going to coach in the NCAA, especially in the Division I and the major universities, I think Kirk Ferentz had said, hey, I've been in this game for a long time, and in order for us to survive and make college football what it should be, and this is a paraphrase, that we need to be able to embrace it all. NIL, transfer portal. There are too many things going on, and there are too many things to figure out about how it is that someone gets to protect their license, their likeness. And they don't get to all the time, but then you have the other companies that are giving them the opportunities to get started. So I think the level of maturity that these young folks have playing is one good particular thing. Where it becomes a challenge, as you all mentioned, is do you really finish the season with your team? The NIL, one of the things that it does throw a monkey wrench in, it's going to really help decide, do you have a program, a football program, or do you have a team? A team is the best team you have for that year. All those other coaches, when we came up, you knew who you were going to have for 4 years. You had to set out a whole year to transfer. So we set out, we did these other things, and people had inducements, but as G was saying, there wasn't a whole lot that you could really say about these inducements because they were illegal, flying your mother in and everything else. But at NIL, you're protecting things. You're learning how to manage your affairs. You're learning how to market yourself. And no one ever talked about what brand we were. We all just said everybody should know if you went to Penn State, you should get a job. But everybody else's image was someone else's, So I would say I don't see NIL. I don't see it destroying college football. You still have the state legislators that are big on protecting this, the stakeholders that are surrounding the universities, and the boosters that are providing the money, and the companies that are taking on some of these folks, and the way they deliver NIL is helpful, where the companies are paying it through the university, and the university is doling out the NIL money. But even the problem is once you get that amount of money, then you can make your commercial that that you couldn't make before, you can make. So that's great. But the question is going to be, what kind of program do you have? What are you selling? Are you selling a program, or are you saying we play the best football here and you're going to learn how to be a student wherever you go? I think that's what's thrown a monkey wrench in about the brand of the team and the brand of whatever your program is, because I don't think it's possible to have a program as long as we have NIL. You have a great team going to a great university about what it can offer.
I think that's a really good distinction that you make between a good program versus a good team. I think that, you nailed it with that.
Yes, that should be a quote.
Yeah, you need to put that on the shirt, big dude.
I'll try it.
I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, so Indiana would be a program. Miami was a team. My Ohio State Buckeyes, I'm like, are they a program because they're constantly at the top, or are they just a team because they're using the system to stay up there?
I think you're a hybrid. I think you're a hybrid, G. You're a hybrid. I think you're closer to, I think, majority team, but you're a hybrid because you dabble with the transfers.
Yeah.
But most of your team is people that you have recruited into the pipeline. You don't see a lot of guys transferring out of there, It's usually your original guys. So I'd say you're probably more of a hybrid. Interesting thing about the NIL, the question that I posed was, will it destroy college football? It could actually enhance it because now you might have guys because of the money that's flowing through. Well, shoot, I'll stay to my senior year because when I go on this rookie contract, I'm going to take that Eric Dickerson pay cut.
And that did
And
happen.
for the
Yes.
younger crowd won't understand what I mean by the Eric Dickerson pay cut, but
Oh yeah.
Eric
Fully
Dickerson,
expressed.
Hall of Fame running back, who basically made a joke about he'd be taking a pay cut to go to the NFL because SMU's program was paying him illegally under the table, allegedly. Um,
Well, come
but
on, dog. It's all on the documentary.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, I don't want to get sued or anything like that.
I feel you.
Allegedly, I wasn't there. I just read about it and heard about it.
Wonderful
But
documentary, by the way.
yeah, but yeah, I would say that. I mean, if we look at the playoffs, we had pure entertainment like we haven't had before the end of college football season. And I think a lot of that, and on one hand, I've had arguments with people about 24-year-old running backs and things like that. But I think the quality of the game was better. And you started it off with that earlier, G, with saying you have guys who are more well-oiled players in terms of their routine, their techniques, discipline, all of that stuff that makes the game better and not sloppy. So I would say that we actually end up with a better product. Now, how we control it in this parity aspect of it, we'll have to see how that unfolds as the years progress. Because right now, I mean, we haven't had back-to-back champions in a while, and that's what I guess would be what we're really looking for in college football. We don't want the same team winning it 10 years in a row. So I think if we keep seeing these teams elevate and different teams winning it, you're always going to have those powers who are their names are always going to be in the conversation. They're going to be competitive, but it's good to see some of these teams, be in that conversation now. And I think college football is better off in the long run, but I think we do need to figure out something with the transfer portal and the way that these coaches basically just jump ship on players that they've recruited, because you have coaches making statements about controlling the transfer portal, but they don't want to be held to some type of accountability for basically breaching a contract that you signed with a university, and then trying to sue so that you can get your payout. So that's another episode, I suppose, because we could probably spend an hour or two just talking about that. Anybody else want to add anything?
Yeah,
NIL, transfer, anything?
I was
Well,
thinking about the prompt. Will NIL destroy college football? And I said no. But if I take a nuanced review, I think it helps some parts and it is destroying some other parts. So
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think it's helping. I'm all about the students being able to get paid for their name, image, and likeness. So I think it's moving that argument forward. So it's not what I thought it was going to be. It's not even what was originally discussed. But I think the way it's going, we're going to get back to that. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's helping. I think NIL is helping some teams that may not have always been in the mix. Now they're in the mix. So I think that is really, really good. Where is it hurting? I believe some of the students are being hurt because some of them are just, and I get it, they're chasing the money. And then some of them, and this relates to the portal, they're chasing the money, but if they're not good enough, they're being asked to go into the portal, or they think that they're good enough to go into the portal. And when you have thousands are just floundering there, and if you don't get picked up, you just don't get picked up.
Done.
So,
Yep, you're done.
so
Yep.
I think, and some of that is NIL. Some of that is the vulture agents telling people you can get that NIL bag by going elsewhere. So I
Mm-hmm.
right.
think that part is hurted. What you say, big dude?
No, I said right. I was
Yeah. So I
agreeing.
think that hurt. I think the product is actually pretty good if you're at the higher levels. Be it if
Mm-hmm.
you're at the higher level of G5. I don't know if y'all watch many many of the higher level G5 teams play, but that's actually some really good football.
Wow.
And a lot of them end up going to P4s, a lot of the stars at the G5s. And then, and you can see at the higher levels, a lot of the teams in the P4 play some really good ball. So I definitely think that I don't know if it helps or hurts or that has just changed, but it's definitely shifted to the number of teams who actually can field a really quality team. And then I'll close by saying that, but the flip side of that is that the product, and we now I'll just make this quick. The product when you get to the bowl games are now just crap, unless it's playoff related. And so I think in the NIL transfer, basically money, and I'm kind of lumping all that together, is that together is kind of hurting, I think, college football. So I think it was a more nuanced answer than what I originally provided.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point about those who end up in the portal and then that ends their career. Um, we know a lot of these players are getting bad advice. They're seeing what's trending. Well, I'll just hop
Mm-hmm.
in the portal. I'm not playing. My coach said something made me mad. I'm not getting as much money as this person. I'm going to hop in the portal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Assuming that there's a position. But if they really look at it, if they would look at it objectively and step outside what's happening for a minute, there's not enough spots for all of the players that are in the portal.
No doubt. And
So,
here's another
uh,
thing. A lot of times, their position is being filled while they're in the portal.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You recruit or transfer, and so some try to go back and secure their old role, and it's like, yeah, I'm sorry, dog, but somebody has that spot now. Good luck.
Well, and it
right.
creates this cycle. Look at Mendoza's little brother.
Oh, he's gone.
Basically had to
Yep.
transfer because Ignetti's bringing in somebody.
Right,
I
Yeah.
mean, what do you do? Sorry,
right.
bring us home. Bring us home, big dude, for your final comments.
No, just the final thing is um, the college presidents. I'm not sure what Congress can do. The college presidents are the ones that need to get together on this. I mean, they're all for themselves. So, what good is that going to do? Something's got to happen. And I think that G spoke about basically, you talked about checks and balances, that something has got to happen with the fluidity and all the things together. But people need to understand, though, about taking it away because it's individual states and individual entities that's taken over NIL. That ship has sailed, and now that revenue sharing is involved with it. Now 22% of it, that ship is also sailed further.
Yep.
And with that,
All right, gentlemen. Well, I appreciate your input. Certainly, we could talk this to death. There's certainly more to discuss as all of this continues to evolve. It'll be interesting to see what the college football offseason is like. We have a couple of lawsuits that are out there with players
Yeah,
trying to get out of contracts.
yeah,
So
crazy.
some of it I'm not even sure how to process or how to even feel about it because I'm definitely pro player, but it's like, bro, you just said you were coming back yesterday and signed a
Treat 'em like a
contract
coach.
and then you want to hop in the portal the next day. So we got to, like I said earlier, we got to figure out the coaches are able to do. We can't stop the players from doing it. So we have to figure out what that looks like. But thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, gents. Subscribe and follow us, and we will see you next time on Chasing Rings.